Hey everyone, this is Rico Siempre. So, if you don't know who I am a registered nurse in real life, but I am a VTuber, registered nurse educator here online. So, if you all don't know who I am, at least in terms of my credentials, registered nurse, of course. I have a bachelor's degree in nursing. I also have a license in public health nursing. I'm also a certified nephrology nurse. Now, I'd like to welcome to you all to my first episode of Virtual Vital Signs. Now, what is virtual vital signs? So it's an idea I concocted a couple, I'd say about a month or so back. In my tenure of trying to find a ways to reach out and find a way to educate people in the VTuber community, people's health problems, people's disabilities. I've noticed a lot of fellow VTubers have chronic health conditions. They have disabilities. They're dealing with health issues that not a whole lot of people, they don't tend to talk about. Or, if they want to talk about it, sometimes it's in the background, but they don't really want, but it's something they don't really try to keep in the forefront. But I think part of it is that we do a disservice amongst ourselves if we don't talk about the harder issues, because it's part of the human experience. It's life. And as much as we want to have fun and we want to relax and enjoy, I think it's important that we also understand that, hey, other people experience hardship and experience struggles as well. And I think it's my way of trying to build empathy for each other and amongst the community. So I'm hoping through my series that not only can we learn about the different health conditions that people go through, but we can also learn about people's lives and learn that, hey, there's a whole world out there, and there's a lot of people out there who need us, who share the same feelings, who share the same pains and successes, triumphs and trials as much as anybody else, as much as you. So I'm hoping through the series we can try and connect. So for my very first episode, it's a pretty heady topic, and one to which I'm going to have to admit I'm not too familiar with, because they really don't teach you this in nursing school. They teach you a lot of things. They teach you how to take care of a person. They teach you anatomy and physiology. They teach you how to take care of certain conditions. But learning how to take care of someone who is transgender is something that is usually put on the wayside. And that's an unfortunate aspect of our education. So I think it's really important that we bring that to light for everybody to see, because I'm going to have to admit, I'm not the most knowledgeable. But that's why it's important that we talk about it. It's important that we educate ourselves. And I think I need to educate myself as well. I'll be the first to admit. And I think we all do too. So when we talk about transgender people, a lot of them do want to pursue transgender healthcare. And what they want is also gender affirming care. So, and I'm going to say it right here and now, gender affirming care, trans healthcare, is healthcare, and it is a right, and that is undeniable. And you heard it here, and no one is going to take that away from them. So I will support each and every one of them in the community. with that being said, I don't think I'm the best one to talk about it, though. So I would like to invite my guests to speak on their experience. My dear friend, Japanese language teacher, Arium founder, founding streamer here in the US, Puppy-Sensei. So let's give a round of applause if we can in chat. So let me go ahead and bam. So for everybody here, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I am Puppy-Sensei. So what I do is basically I make Japanese language lessons content on YouTube and Twitch, and I guess TikTok for another 6 or 7 hours. And I'm also a founding streamer on Irium, which I'm very, very positive about. I love Irium. I love the community on Irium. But basically, my goal has always been to be a teacher, an educator, and to help people learn Japanese. Yeah, when I first started my content, I wasn't like, I wasn't like super out as trans as a content creator. Like I'm out in my life, of course. I'm out as trans with everybody in my life. But that was never what I wanted to be, like my foot forward kind of personality. Like as a content creator, I didn't want to be like the trans girl who teaches Japanese. I wanted to be a Japanese teacher first, and I was never hiding the fact that I was trans, but I think people like knew. It was no well-kept secret or anything. But anyway, that's me. I'm Puppy-Sensei. I make Japanese stuff. And you can also call me XS if you like, because that's my name. That's what everybody calls me. So, yeah.
Well, I think as a small icebreaker, how did we meet, Puppy-Sensei?
Did we meet through Irium?
I think so, and
yeah,
Irium, and I think through Celeste.
And through Celeste, yeah, absolutely. Celeste has been honestly this like pretty amazing positive force in my life, and has kind of been like this, I want to say like love nexus that has brought me to so many people that I just like now love and cherish and hold dear. So I feel like Celeste is kind of like at the center of that, and is this just very, very, very special friend for me.
Yeah, and she's really been a special friend to me too. And I just actually got off stream with her just recently, and she, thank you again so much for the raid, Celeste. I really do appreciate it. Going into here, yeah, it's I'm very happy I've met you, Sensei, and honestly, I think we've I know it's only been a short time, but I think we've really bonded in the short time we've met, because honestly, your stories really quite affected me, and I think it's something that needs to be shared, and obviously it's something that you've been wanting to tell, and
yeah,
I'm happy to have to give you the platform to tell it.
Thank you. And I'm honored too that you're willing to do that for me, because if I'm being honest, and I've talked about this elsewhere, but honestly, this story I've not shared with anyone. You're going to be the first person that isn't like a member of my family that I really tell the details of this story to. So I hate to be so heavy.
It's okay.
But, yeah. It's important. I think it's really important.
So I think you've shared with me back in 2021, you shared with me that you were able to finally qualify for gender affirming surgery. Is that correct?
That's right. And I'll say there's this pervasive, I'm gonna call it a lie, because that's what it is. It's a pervasive lie that these surgeries are easy to get, and that's just not true. So me personally, I was someone who knew from the time that I was a child that I was trans. And I know there's a lot of conversation about that, and there's a lot of debate about that, and a lot of dialogue about when you can really know that you're trans. But I knew very, very early. Some of my first memories were of being confused about gender and being confused about my gender, and really feeling like I just felt more feminine in the world, and kind of my feminine spirit was much, more out there than anything that was kind of assigned at birth, right? But as a child, I didn't have the language to express any of that. I didn't know how to say any of that. All I knew was I liked girl stuff. I liked dolls. I liked the color pink. And that was kind of my life. And for a long time, that's how it went, until a little bit later in life when I really started understanding what it meant to be trans. And I started thinking then that I wanted to pursue surgery. But getting surgery is just it's not easy. It's not easy. And what would follow after making this decision that, hey, this is something I want to do, is half a lifetime of work, of really, really, really hard work to go to a good school, to get a really good education, to put myself into a good job where I knew that I would qualify for the benefits that I deserve to be able to make it through the surgery. Because of course, it's not even just paying for the surgery that you need. You need health insurance for all kinds of things, for your hospital stay, for all of these things that go along with a major surgery that is necessary for life. And that was a long process for me, but I think it was also a process that, in a way, I made it my singular goal in life. This is what I wanted to do, and I was happy to do it, to pursue my dream of being able to feel at home in my body in a way that made the most sense for me. And it was never, if I can be crass, it was never a sexual goal for me. That's not what I was after. I simply wanted to feel right in my body, and the way that I was born, unfortunately, I didn't. And so I had to work really, really hard to become the me that I always knew I was supposed to be. And so in 2021, in December, a December that would turn out to be a very, very cold December, I was finally able to get that surgery.
What?
Go ahead.
So what kind of work, or what kind of like preparatory stuff did they have to make you go through before you could qualify for the surgery?
Well, for anyone, even just to get HRT, right? That's hormone replacement therapy. Even just to get that, frankly, you need to basically have letters from 2 different therapists that say, hey, I've looked you over and I've talked to you and you're of sound mind. You are making this decision on your own as an adult, and I think you qualify for HRT, for hormones that would increase your quality of life, right? And so I did that. And along with that, one of the things that you have to do with these 2 different therapists is you have to live in your chosen gender, your expressed gender, for a full year, right? Which means dressing in that gender, which means presenting in that gender, which means choosing your name and all of these things, right? And so I think a lot of people don't realize that during that time, you haven't been diagnosed with a mental illness, which means you're seeing a therapist often out of your own pocket. You're seeing 2 therapists because you're required to have 2 letters, and you're presenting without hormones. And so that's a dangerous time for any young trans person, that you are often not really presenting very well. You're not what we call, I hate this word, but it's not what we call passing very well, because you haven't started your hormone treatments, right? And so for that year, you're essentially, I think, putting yourself in a very vulnerable position so that you can prove to two different therapists that, hey, yes, this is definitely my decision. It's what I want to do. And that only qualifies you for hormones. It doesn't even begin to qualify you for the surgery. And to go to the surgery, you have to go through all kinds of other steps as well. And so I had reached a point in my life where I kind of didn't feel like I would maybe ever qualify for my surgery as much as I wanted it. I wasn't certain that I would ever be able to, until 2021 rolled around, and I finally felt like I had saved up enough money. I had good health insurance. I had a pretty good job. I felt like this was the time, and I felt like I needed to do it. And if I'm being honest, I think I was at a point at that time where I felt like politics were moving in a direction in America where I felt that if I didn't take the opportunity to do it, those doors might close and I might not have the opportunity to get that surgery. And so finally, I made the ultimate decision. This is going to happen. I'm going to make it happen. And I started talking to doctors. And what I realized at that point was, after everything that I'd been through, because I had also then had to go to another therapist and get yet another letter that said I qualified for surgery.
Wow.
But as I started talking to the surgeons, I realized that they had their own qualifications, and some of those qualifications are health related. That you have to be able to prove that you're in really good health, that you have to be able to prove that you qualify. And actually, some of the first surgeons that I talked to would even say things like, your insurance won't cover this surgery up front. You need to pay for it out of pocket. And then if you're lucky, your insurance will pay you back. And that would be like $30, $40, $50,000 down payment. And then you just have to bite your tongue and hope that your insurance company pays you back. But I found one surgeon who was willing to take me on as a client without a down payment. And the moment that I found that surgeon, I was in, hook, line, and sinker.
That must have been a life-changing decision from the doctor for you. How did you feel when they said they'll take you on, regardless of that?
That doctor was a 12-hour drive from where I lived. And even just meeting the doctor to talk about whether or not I would qualify for surgery, every time I had to travel to the doctor to meet them in person and then find out, yes, you need to pay us $30,000 up front, or then find out that they had all these weird policies that made me uncomfortable. And so this particular doctor was actually the fifth that I had gone to see. And there was part of me at that time, this was a 12-hour drive. I actually sort of made it a tiny little vacation. I stayed in a really cute little Airbnb and met with this doctor, but I kind of had it in mind that if this doesn't work out, I think I'm maybe going to give up. But I did meet with that doctor, and he said he would take me on as a client. And I remember walking out of his office. He actually had this really beautiful office. I remember walking out and just looking up at the sky, and I got in an Uber, and I just looked up at the sky and I just started crying, because for the first time in my life, I felt like I was really, really going to be able to be myself.
Real quick, thank you, Jay. Thank you, Sora, for rating. I really appreciate the support today. They are friends of the stream of mine, so thank you so much for supporting Puppy-Sensei today.
Thank you.
So I can't imagine needing to find the care you need 12 hours from where you live just to find, to be able to be yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that's something that a whole lot of other trans youth or trans adults nowadays are still trying to struggle with today, right?
Absolutely. And And again, like I don't want to get too political in this conversation, but I will say that there's this rumor. I don't know if you can call it a rumor. I think it's just a lie, that there's this idea going around social media that like you can just go to your high school and get this surgery, that you can just come home and the surgery's done and it's been done. Like that's so far from the truth that it's actually laughable to me. Because for me, without honestly, without any compunction whatsoever, I can say this was a process that took almost a decade.
A decade of finding yourself, of decade of
Yeah,
living your life as a woman,
exactly.
of being true, of being closer to being true to who you are. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, by the time I was able to have my surgery, I can remember going to one of my bosses and saying, I'm going to be having this surgery. And I remember my boss being like, I didn't even know that you were trans. Like, I actually had conversations with people that were like, "Oh, are you changing your pronouns to he, him?" And I would have to be like, "No, I've been trans for so long that no one knew."
So, after the meeting in December, how long did it take from the initial consultation to getting you on board to the surgery?
That's pretty wild. Initially, I was put on a wait list that would have been about 7 months long. But I was pretty quickly contacted by the doctor, and the surgical team told me, "Hey, we actually have an opening in like less than 4 months, and we can get you in." And of course, I was so eager that I snatched that up immediately. And at that time, I'm kind of always I'm perpetually on Discord because that's who I am. And at that time, I had started a countdown on Discord of the days going down to when my surgery would be, because I was just that hopeful and excited about it.
Um, Going leading up to it,
Mhm.
how was how I'm pretty sure you have a lot of. I want. How would you say it was your relationship with your close or your close ones, yeah, your loved ones,
Sure,
going
sure.
into it? How are they approaching your upcoming surgery?
Um, Not well. My
Mhm.
family has never been particularly supportive. I think they've been, kind of moderately supportive, or maybe supportive from the sidelines with a little bit of a view askance, but always with a little bit of hesitation. So I didn't have a whole lot of support. And furthermore, if I'm being honest, I didn't have a whole lot of trans support either. I've never had a whole lot of other support within the trans
Oh
community.
wow.
Uh, yeah, just because I'm not I'm not great at kind of like talking about myself all that much, surprisingly. And so I've never been like extraordinarily outgoing. And I think there was a period there in the months leading up to my surgery when I was kind of in a scramble, in a very sudden amount of time. I really wanted to make as many trans friends as I possibly could so I could ask people questions about this surgery, because I was extremely nervous about it. I had a lot of nerves. And I went into this process where I was suddenly trying to find lots of other trans women that I could ask questions about. And honestly, the answers that I got, really, they came in two classifications.
Hmm.
One classification was, don't worry about it. It's fine. Your surgery will be fine. You're going to be fine. It's no big deal. This is a super easy surgery. And then the other classification was, this is the worst thing I've ever done in my entire life. It was so hard. It was so painful. I made it through, but like, oh my gosh, it was scary, and oh my gosh, it was awful. But everyone that I talked to, of course, came back and said they wouldn't change their decision for anything in the world. Like, as hard as it was, as much pain as they went through. um I remember talking to one girl, and I remember her saying, they may offer to give you an epidural. She said, if you have that opportunity, tell them no, because it was awful, because I had an epidural and it was like the most painful experience. um and as it turned out, my surgeon did offer me an epidural and I did take it, she's kind of right. It was really painful.
I mean, I'm gonna have to share with you there. I had an epidural for my back once because I was that much in pain a couple of months back, and I have to say it, pregnant ladies, y'all are tough. Like, I got nothing but respect, nothing but respect. So I will leave it there.
Yes.
Not my wheelhouse, but nothing but respect. But you know, it's when they do talk about the surgery, you know, I was doing a little bit of research, and almost 90 to 85% of the surgery of the gender affirming surgeries do come with success. So how was yours different?
Yeah, I think I have a whole story, and I can go into the story of exactly what happened. I'd be more than happy to talk about the details of what happened, but if I can be very succinct, I can say after I had complications, and hopefully I'll get the time to go into those complications a little bit, but after I had complications, I joined a group of other trans women with complications. And I can tell you it's an elite group. There aren't many, but in talking to them, I think one of the conversations that we had was that my complications were some of the worst. And so when we talk about these surgeries not going as planned, I'm kind of maybe a little bit of a test case that I'm proof that things can go wrong. Yeah.
Oh, I think sorry, I just wanted to read this comment here.
Sure.
I'm a trans guy. Just know I've had an epidural once. It didn't work on the left side of my body, so be very careful with it. No, feeling that, JD. But yeah, it's so with your experience, so did your doctors and your care team, did they express any of the complications to you prior to your surgery?
I remember having a conversation with my surgeon, and I remember that at the time, I recall my surgeon saying, I do these surgeries often enough that I don't have complications, that I do these surgeries all the time. This is one of the things that I do. He was also a plastic surgeon, and I remember him saying, this is no big deal. There are some complications, they are possible, but they just don't happen. They just don't happen. And at the time, I remember thinking about the number of the surgeries that he performed, and I remember thinking he does plastic surgery all the time on cis women, on trans women, on men. He does these surgeries so often that that's all he does all the time, every day. He just does surgery, does surgery, does surgery. And I remember thinking, oh, wow, all that experience, he's going to know exactly how to take care of me. But it wasn't until I had complications that I suddenly realized a surgeon who only does surgeries all the time, who's constantly booked, who's doing surgery 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times a day, however many times he's doing these surgeries, they don't have time for complications. They don't have time for problems. They're looking at the next patient. And I hadn't thought about that before. And that's one of the reasons why I really think one of the most important things, as excited as I was to get my surgery, I don't have any regrets about my surgery. Even after all of the pain that I've gone through, I don't have any regrets. I wouldn't change anything, except maybe this one thing. When I was picking my surgeon, I kind of wish that I had picked a surgeon that wasn't so busy that he was constantly doing surgeries. I wish I had picked a surgeon who had more experience with complications, and one that hadn't said, I don't get those things. I don't get complications. Because if you don't get them, then you have no idea how to handle them.
So you kind of wish there was some some of that humility going into it,
Yeah.
going into your surgery.
Yeah.
I think any clinician worth their salt should be willing to have that sense of humility going into any kind of major procedure like that, or even going into like saying with a diagnosis. I remember a couple months back, I because I'm trying to relate, I had to. I visited a neurosurgeon because my back was on the fritz. I had to visit the ER because I had some numbness going down my leg. I had so much pain. I was on narcotics for quite a while, and I needed them around the clock. So when I visited this neurosurgeon, he up and said to me, my sister, and my mom, "Rico, I do not have the experience or the knowledge to operate on you.
Yeah.
But I do know someone who I trust that can." And so they referred me out to my current neurosurgeon, to which I'm very grateful. I was very grateful he had the humility and knowing that he had that lack of knowledge and skill and experience to understand he wasn't able to do it for me. He wasn't able to give me the amount of the set amount of care that I would have required. And
right.
I think that's what you're expressing, that's the one regret that you're expressing right now with your previous surgeon, is that I think maybe he would have had some humility going into your case.
Yeah, I wish I hadn't been told that complications are so rare that they barely happen, because it filled me with this false sense of security that I just truly felt like I can trust this surgeon to totally take care of me, and that's not really what happened.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing with doctors, nurses, techs, clinicians. I think we all need to, as someone who practices in the field, we always need to be wary of, like, we can't promise that everything's going to be all right, because sometimes they don't. Things can happen just like that. In a second, things can go wrong. So we have to be able to meet the patient where they're at and let them know, hey, things can go wrong. We're going to do our damnedest to make sure it doesn't, but there's always going to be a risk. And so
absolutely,
I think maybe your surgeon should have had that state of mind to think about that when talking with you.
Yeah.
So when it came to the surgery, from what you've shared with me, from what happened, yes, they were able to create the new your new body part for you, because we're trying to stick to community guidelines here.
Sure.
But unfortunately, what happened is that a fistula was opened up between the new body part and the colon.
That's right.
So if audience doesn't know, the colon has a lot of you know where the colon is. You know what the colon has. A lot of bacteria can go from one side to the other. And if there's that bridge, unfortunately, a lot of problems can happen. So can you are you willing to share what problems happened to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not something that we talk about, but this kind of fistula isn't actually all that terribly rare. It happens to women who have given birth from time to time. that this kind of fistula develops. And of course, that's not something that we talk about because because it's icky, right? But it can happen. So after I woke up from my initial surgery, I didn't really know that there was a problem. I had a lot of pain, but it's funny. One of the first things that I remember after waking up from surgery is I remember my surgeon saying, a lot of people bleed a lot during surgery, but you bled more than any other patient I've ever had. He just said that very nonchalantly. Yeah. So okay, well that's fun to know. And so I didn't really know what to expect over the next few days, but I was discharged from the hospital basically 2 days after my surgery. This is a pretty major surgery. Discharged from the hospital. Remember, I'm 12 hours from home. And initially it had been my plan to stay there at the Airbnb for a lot longer. But I had my first checkup with my surgeon, and my surgeon was like, just go home, just go ahead and drive home. And so that's what I did. And so I went back home. I had my instructions. I thought I knew what to look for, but I definitely started having some weird symptoms. Maybe within 4 or 5 days after my surgery. A lot of pain, but I thought, well, the pain is to be expected. But then I had some kind of weird bleeding patterns that didn't make any sense to me. And being somebody who is a little shy and never wants to bother anybody, I didn't want to call my surgeon. I didn't want to say, hey, I've got weird symptoms that I don't know how to describe. And so I made a mistake. And I'll own that mistake right now, and I'll be honest about it. I went online and I posted pictures of what I had in terms of bleeding. Of course, they weren't this wasn't exposed pictures of my downstairs parts or anything like that. But I just showed pictures of my bleeding and the kind of blood that I had. And I went, this doesn't seem right. And can anybody give me any advice? And luckily, I had some trans people then who saw these pictures I had put on Reddit and said, you need to go back to your surgeon right now. And I think, honestly, those people may have saved my life. However, I need to take a little detour here and talk about the mistake. Because the mistake was that once those pictures were online, I was just out there going, hey, I'm scared, I'm confused, I'm sick, I don't feel good, I have pain, and I'm looking for help. But because I had posted on a trans forum, those pictures got picked up by some people. Oh, no. And they went out to some sites that are a little not terribly reputable. And there was actually a small website that was devoted to, if I can be honest about it, it was devoted to the hope that I didn't survive. And people were making comments on a daily basis and contacting me directly with death threats and telling me that they hoped that whatever was wrong with me would kill me. And that was a really hard thing to live through when I also now felt that actually I was in trouble, that actually there was something wrong. And so I hopped back in the car, drove all the way back that 12 hours back to that same surgeon, and went back and said, hey, something's not right. And of course, that was the case. That, they always say don't self-diagnose, but it was not right. It was not right. And that's when they discovered the fistula. They hadn't discovered it before. It had been there, but they just hadn't seen it. And immediately, that very moment, I was taken in for surgery. And unfortunately, they realized that surgery had failed while I was still in the hospital recovering. So I was recovering, and my surgeon came to talk to me and said, hey, we did the surgery, we looked at everything, but I can now tell you that surgery failed. So he told me that he wanted me to get a hotel and that they were going to monitor my symptoms and that they were going to do another surgery, but they couldn't do it right away because he was very busy. So I got a hotel, and I actually ended up staying in that hotel for a month while I was bleeding very frequently, constantly. And they were finally able to get me back in for surgery and did another surgery. And coming out of that surgery, he said, I don't know if this was successful or not, but if it's not, we need to talk about other options, and I'm not the surgeon to do that. And so when it came to pass a few days later that they realized that that surgery had not been successful, so this is the second surgery that I had that was not successful to fix my problem, he said, I can no longer help you. I don't know any doctors that can. You need to go home. And so I went home. I drove that 12 hours, actually in a blizzard. As a matter of fact, it was a blizzard at the time. Went back home, still bleeding. And immediately after getting home, I went back to my local ER, checked myself in the ER, and I said that I have a fistula, that I'm actively bleeding, and that I need help. At that time, I was told that I needed 4 units of blood. For me, I didn't think that 4 sounded like a big number, but I'm not very smart. So it came to pass later that I realized that that was a pretty significant portion of my body's blood. I think you probably know better than I do how much 4 units of blood is.
Yeah. So for anybody out there, a unit of blood, a standard unit of blood, is roughly 1 pint, or roughly 500 milliliters, give or take. So if you can imagine, the human body is made up of approximately 5 liters. Losing just 1 liter can almost put you into shock. So the fact that you've lost so much blood going back home and into the ER, and I'm gonna have to say it's quite a miracle you're still with us right now.
Yeah, it really is. In the days that followed, I spent Christmas in the hospital that year. That was almost the exact day that I needed those 4 units of blood was Christmas. So that is my Christmas miracle. I'm still alive because I was in the hospital over Christmas. But in the days that followed that, I was visited by 3 Christmas spirits, just like Scrooge. I was visited by a gynecologist, I was visited by a colorectal surgeon, and I was visited by a plastic surgeon. The gynecologist came, looked over my situation, and she said, we only operate on natural, that word, right? those body parts. We only operate on cis women, and we can't help you. And I'm sorry, but I hope you get the help that you need, but we don't operate on people like you. And then I was visited by a colorectal surgeon, and they came and they looked over and they asked me a bunch of questions, and they did a bunch of probes, and they actually were pretty invasive. And then they said, we don't understand your anatomy. We don't know what a trans person is, so we can't help you, but good luck. And then I was visited by a plastic surgeon. And until my dying day, I'm never going to forget what he told me. Sorry, I'm going to get emotional here, and I apologize.
Okay. Let's take your time.
But, yeah. This plastic surgeon came in with a team of other plastic surgeons. And he looked over everything, and he looked over my situation. And I remember him looking at me in the hospital bed, still bleeding. And he said, why didn't you do your research before you had this surgery? Didn't you think something like this would happen? And then he said he couldn't help me. and they left. And finally, in the ER, being told by my nurses that they didn't know if I was going to even survive this, I had a surgeon who came to visit me, and he said that he was a general trauma surgeon. And he said normally they wouldn't take on a client like me, and that there was nothing that he could do for my colon. There was nothing that he could do for my fistula. But he said, I can, if you want, give you a voluntary colostomy, and that might save your life. And he did.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry the doctor said that to you.
Yeah.
I wish I was the nurse manager on that floor. I wish I could have chewed them out, give them a little something. Be like, do y'all know about bedside manner? So what did you decide going forward?
Sure. So at that point, I had the colostomy surgery. So they put a colostomy in. Waking up from that was a very, very surreal experience. That was a weird surgery, and I woke up, and I remember being told by my nurse that you may have to live with this for the rest of your life. They may not be able to take this back down. And I remember her telling me how to take care of it and how to care for the skin around the colostomy site and all of this stuff. And I just remember thinking, how did I get here? How did this happen in the span of less than a month? How did I go from thinking that I was going to get the surgery that I have needed my entire life, that I was going to finally have really what I have always needed to be at home in my body, to having somebody tell me how to care for my colostomy kit? It was honestly a surreal experience that I just, to this day, I don't know how I even made it through, just by sheer force of will that I just kept going one day at a time. At that time, I reached out to my original surgeon, and I said, hey, this is what has happened. They were not able to treat my fistula. They were not able to get it closed, but they did do a colostomy. And he said at that time that he would be happy if I ever got my fistula closed to reopen my canal. And I remember feeling really dubious about that at the time, but I was like, okay, well, that's what we have to do. That in order for me to feel at home in my body, that's what we have to do. We've got to get this thing taken care of. We've got to get it closed. And once it's closed, I can go back to pursuing my dream, the dream that I had spent almost all of my life trying to fulfill. But in order to do that, I was going to need to find a surgeon. And as we had just proven, there was no surgeon in my area that was willing to even treat my fistula at all. They would say, we don't understand your anatomy. And in fact, even my personal doctor, my primary care physician, when I talked to her, she was like, I don't know enough about any of this stuff to give you any kind of advice. I'm sorry. And my primary care provider only treats trans clients. She only treats trans clients, and she said, I don't know enough about any of this to give you any kind of advice, right? So that really tells you the kind of situation that I was suddenly in. The closest surgeon to me that was willing to operate on me was 500 miles away. And so I was looking again at long-term care while trying to still maintain a lifestyle, but having to kind of commute back and forth between surgeries or having to stay for long extended periods of time before and after surgery. Now, luckily, the surgeon that I found who was willing to operate on my fistula was wonderful. He took such good care of me, really, really good care of me. I really, I don't feel comfortable naming names at all throughout any of this story.
Of course.
But yeah, but I will just say that the surgeon who performed my fistula closure was in Michigan, and I would recommend him in a heartbeat to anyone because he really took such good care of me. However, I will never forget that in my first meeting with him, I remember saying, okay, here's the situation, here's what has happened, here's what I've lived through, here are all of these things. And thankfully, my original surgeon said that he was very happy to reopen my vaginal canal if I ever managed to get my fistula taken care of. And I remember this new surgeon looking at me with this like shocked expression on his face, and he said, "That's not a thing. There's no such thing as reopening your canal. If it's closed, it's probably closed forever." And I left that appointment in shock. Just, I couldn't believe it. That once again, I had felt like everything had changed for me. But they tried the first surgery, and basically going forward from here, there's kind of a pattern. I would have to travel to Michigan, have surgery, wait there between 2 and 3 weeks, and then they would test it to see if it had been successful. And every time it would come back not successful. That they would find that fistula had not been closed, that they had attempted various plastic surgeries to try to close that, and they would find that it was just being stubborn. In the end, because I had had 3 full failures, I went back to my doctor, and he said he was willing to try one more thing. He said, "This is kind of our Hail Mary. This is the last step." And this is going to get a little graphic, so I want to kind of prepare everybody that this gets kind of intense. The final plan to finally take care of this problem, if there was anything that was going to work, this was the only thing that they knew to try. What they did was they removed a significant portion of the muscle from my inner thigh on my left leg. And they took all that muscular tissue and they used that as a graft to fully and finally permanently seal my canal. The thinking being that if my canal was permanently, completely sealed, there would be nowhere for that fistula to go. And so I was told at that time that there were 2 things that I needed to be prepared for going into that surgery. First, I needed to be prepared that under no circumstances would I ever have a canal, that there was just no way that anyone would ever agree to operate on me down there ever again. And second, I was told that since they were removing such a significant portion of muscle from my inner leg, they said I needed to be prepared for the possibility that I might never be able to walk again.
My God. How did you feel hearing that news?
By the time that I had heard that news, I had lived with the colostomy for almost 2 years. And there are a lot of people in the world who are living with colostomies. All my sympathy goes to them and their bravery, because it's not easy. And we as human beings, we don't like to talk about what goes on in the bathroom. I think most people do not like to discuss what goes on in the bathroom. But if you've ever had to live with a colostomy, especially for an extended period of time, oh my gosh, it's a hassle. It's so much work, and you don't really feel like you fit anymore. You know, people treat you different, and it's really, really hard. It's hard to get out and experience things, um, because you're always afraid that something might happen or somebody might notice, or God forbid it, you know, should burst while you're out in public. It's the worst. It only happened to me a couple times, but it was always a fear. It was a constant anxiety for me. And so I remember telling my doctor, if this surgery means that my canal is going to be permanently closed, and if it means that I'm going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, it's worth it, just to get my life back to some sense of normalcy. And again, I say that with nothing but respect for anyone who's living long term with a colostomy, because it's, for me, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. So, you know, what followed was that surgery, and thankfully it was successful. They were able to close everything. And I can even say happily, I was able to learn to walk again. So, you know, in a way, I can't say that I got what I wanted, but it's an outcome.
You you force yourself to walk again? How?
Yeah. You know, the body is amazing. Our human body is so amazing, and we really are shockingly resilient. It's amazing that something like a simple peanut allergy can put people in the hospital, and yet at the same time, with force of will, you know, even without the muscles on my inner thigh, I found a way. You know, I said, I'm not giving up. I refuse to give up. I'm not going to let this be a specter in my life for the rest of my life. Prior to my initial surgery, I had been an avid hiker. I've hiked a lot in my life. So I've hiked Mount Fuji in Japan. I've also hiked the Yellow Mountains in China, two of my favorite hikes that I've ever done. I would hike almost every week. That was my weekend that I would just go hiking all the time. And after my initial surgery, because I needed so many surgeries in sequence, there was a period of over 2 years where I almost didn't get out of bed, because I would spend all my time having a surgery, laying in bed recovering from surgery. And of course, every time you have surgery and your surgeon is like, here's 10 days worth of pain pills, please don't get up, don't do anything to exacerbate this open wound that you have somewhere on your body. And that means no heavy lifting, don't lift anything heavier than a carton of milk, stay in bed, stay elevated, all of these things. And so, you know, I spent 2 years pretty much bedbound, and having to do almost, you know, having somebody do almost everything for me. And you know, I had lost 2 years of my life. So when I came out of that surgery, yeah, they told me you may never walk again. But within 2 months, I was back up on my feet, because I just refused to spend another day just laying in bed, you know.
I can feel you there. I
Yeah.
remember after my back injury, I had a whole lot of self-reflection. I can't run anymore. I can't jump, but you know, I'm thankful every day that I can still walk. So, you know, I feel you. I really do.
You know, it's really funny. Literally today, I put away my walker because I don't need it anymore.
Yeah?
I had it by the front door every day since my last surgery, and today I was like, you know what? I think this can go in the garage.
Wow, Sensei.
Yeah.
Since the repair, how would you say is your quality of life now?
Well, um, you know, sometimes I still have grief over the loss of really my lifelong dream. I'm really happy that I had this surgery. I really am. I I wouldn't change it for anything in the world. I wouldn't go back, even knowing everything that I know now. If you told me beforehand, you can either have all of these complications and have all of these problems and have all of this pain, or you can not have the surgery at all. That's a non-starter.
Mm.
That's a non-starter for me. I would do it again in a heartbeat. But I do live with a lot of pain. I'm in pain most of the time.
And how do you have to take a lot any medications for your pain, or do you have to? Are you in like certain therapies for it? How are you going about it?
I've been through physical therapy to a degree, and they said, well, we've helped you as much as we can, and we don't know that we can mitigate any more of your pain. My doctors don't want to give me a lot of pain pills, and frankly, I don't want to take a lot of pain pills. So, mostly I try to use mindfulness as my sole guide through pain,
Mm.
just because I already take so many medications. I'm already on. I will be on hormones for the rest of my life, and I don't want to rely on a ton of medications. I don't really love just being on like lots of medications. And so, since my pain is there, but generally speaking, relatively manageable, I try not to rely too much on heavy medications, especially since, you know, I got a lot going on. I'm a busy pup.
Oh yeah, I notice.
Yeah.
I mean, I pop into
Yeah.
your streams every now and then. um, so I know you had some things to say about your care team then. How about now?
Yeah. Um, one of the things that I've noticed, as I said, the doctors in Michigan, there were three of them. And, one of the things that was shocking to me, my original surgeon worked alone. He said, I work alone. I just do all my own stuff. I have one nurse that comes in, but I do all of my surgeries basically by myself, right?
Yeah.
Um, my surgical team that did my repair, even from even from the first meeting, he said, I have a gynecologist that I work with, and I have a colorectal surgeon that I work with, and I don't do anything without them in the room. 100%. He said, the three of us together are a team, and that's my surgical team, and I don't go into surgery unless they're there.
Mm.
And I think, that's something that I wish that I had known going into my original surgery, that it's so much better to have a full team that like can understand all the possible complications. They can understand all of the things that can go wrong. But these days I just see my primary care physician, and she's okay, but I don't think she understands what I've been through. And I don't think she really understands my pain, because I'll come in and I'll say, I still have this pain. And she'll say, well, how long was it since your last surgery? It's been less than a year, right? Your pain could last even another 6 months. It
Oh.
feels like I hear that every time,
Oh man, I'm so sorry. Oh,
Eh,
I mean, as a patient advocate, um,
mhm.
you do have a choice in changing your physician. You have a choice in changing your nurse. You have a choice in changing whoever you work with. So, I mean, not to say that your doctor isn't being good to you, but you do have that right. So,
It's true. It's true.
always
You know,
remember
I'm,
that.
yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. But at the same time, where I live,
Hmm.
there just aren't a lot of options for trans people. You know,
Yeah.
there's one doctor that specializes in trans care. That's it.
And I think that goes back to my first point when I first started, when we first started this recording, this stream, is like I said, I hate to say it, but my breadth of knowledge of trans care is so minimal, and I'm ashamed to say it, and I hate to say that that I don't know as much as I want to, and it kills me inside, because I want to learn how to take care of people like yourself, Sensei, and sorry,
Yeah.
and and you deserve that. Everyone deserves that.
I don't know if, I think part of the problem is that there is a really pervasive idea that to be trans is a choice, and therefore to have these surgeries is also a choice. And sure, there are plenty of trans people who do not pursue surgical options. That's on them. That's 100%. If that's who you are, if that's where you are in life, that you're really happy with the anatomy that you had when you were born, that's great. But I think there's this treatment of trans people where we say, "Oh, you just weren't happy with what you had, or you just weren't happy with the parts that you were born with, or any of this stuff." But in the end, we wear glasses because our eyes don't work correctly. We have surgery on our organs because they're not working correctly. We may decide to have something like weight loss surgery because it may save your life. And that's true of all trans patients. I don't know that I've ever known a trans person who flippantly got one of these surgeries and was just like, yeah, I thought maybe I'd do it just, for fun. This is a major, huge decision. And I think it's so disingenuous that so many people say, you just decided to have this surgery. This took me a decade to get under control. This took me a decade to finally be able to have the surgery that I wanted for my entire life. And yeah, you can say that that's a want, but so is wearing glasses. You can decide not to wear glasses, but you might crash your car, right?
Right.
If you're living with pain and you need surgery to mitigate that pain, it's very easy for somebody to say, oh, well, why didn't you just decide to live with your pain? That doesn't make sense.
Not in the slightest. Nobody
This
wants to
in
live
the
like that.
No. And in the end, this was a surgery that I needed to be a person. I couldn't be a person without this. I had to have it. So it wasn't a voluntary surgery. It was a surgery that saved my life.
Now, I know you say you don't regret it, and
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, would you say, even with the complications you faced and the setbacks, would you say that it's given you a lot of positives too?
Yeah. I mean, without question. I may be in pain a lot of the time. I'll probably walk with a limp for the rest of my life. But I'm me for the first time in my life. I can say with all truthful honesty that this is a body that I can feel comfortable living in, that I'm not spending every day of my life feeling like I'm trapped in skin that's not my own. And I wouldn't change the mental health benefit of that, of just feeling that I am who I am wholly, and that no one can take that away from me. That means everything to me.
Man, I say that. Oh wow, Sensei, Jesus, you're tugging at my heartstrings here. Oh man. So sorry.
Mm,
With
all good.
uh, now that that's been some time,
Yeah.
what do you think would be your health and wellness goals going into the future now? Um, since then.
I think after everything that's happened, I think that I have been cynical about my health. There are so many times in the past 4 years where I have felt like, what's the point? There have been many times where I think nothing's going to improve. I can't get any better than I'm going to get. Sure, I taught myself to walk, but I'm not running either. You know, after having this part of my leg removed, I'm not I'm not living the full life that I want to live. And that's what I want to change. And actually, I was talking about this yesterday. Um, I'm kind of planning a trip to Japan next year.
Oh
That I really,
wow,
yeah.
kick
I
ass!
really, I know. I really want to go back, and I really want to go to Shikoku. I've never had the chance to go to Shikoku before, and I want to hike the way I used to. I want to go and hike and see the natural beauty of this world, because there is nothing like nature to revitalize your soul, and I think my soul has been in need of revitalization for a long time.
That is actually true. So fun fact. I like to joke about it, about needing to
Mm-hmm.
touch grass. But there is legitimate mental health benefit about going outside and touching grass and being out in nature. There's a
Yeah.
reason why you need to be out there and seeing nature, seeing the world around you, because it legitimately is good for you.
Yeah.
You need to see the beauty of nature. You need to see the beauty of what the world has to offer.
Yeah.
You can't be stuck in your own, indoors all the time. You can't be chronically online all the time. Don't get us wrong, we're always going to be here, VTubers, content creators, all that. It's always going to be here, but don't forget to touch grass every now and then, guys.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy you're going back to Japan. And
Yeah.
I wish you'd take me with you.
Field trip.
Field trip with Sensei.
Yay.
uh, um. So, what's the goal with your with your hikes then over in Japan? Are you hoping to like go across the countryside? Is it just going to be pretty easygoing hikes? How's it going to be?
There's a hike that I've wanted to do for all my life, and this isn't the time. This isn't the time. But in Shikoku, there is one hike that really takes most people about 2 months of full hiking. They're in Shikoku, all around the circumference of the island. There are 88 temples, and this walk is an 88 temple walk, where you take a hike and go all the way around the island and stop at all of these pilgrimage sites, really, because really it's a
Wow.
pilgrimage. And this isn't the time in my life to be able to do that. I'm so busy. I'm doing content creation all the time. I put out, like, as you know, I do a long form lesson every Friday. Came out today. Today's Saturday. Sure, we're only a day late. I do a weekly grammar drop. I'm on Irium every day. I make daily words of the day and weekly katakana words of the day. And then I also stream on Twitch. And as if that weren't enough, I'm a full-time 40-hour-a-week professional translator interpreter. So I really, when I say I'm busy, like, I really am very, very, very busy. But even though I know that this isn't the right time for me to do that full walk of the 88 temples, that is a life goal for me. So I think for now, next year, my goal is to start prepping for that for later in my life, so that I'm ready to do that hike, which, like I said, usually takes most people about 2 months. So I think if I did 2 weeks of hike, that's a really good first step to be able to do that later.
By the way, my wife's in chat, and she did notice they're using the word of the day to promote it. Committed, but you're a full-time working doggo.
Yeah. I really am. I love being a translator and interpreter. Just for chat, so that your chat understands really the difference. Because I don't think everyone knows the difference between this. A translator is someone who translates documents, right? So there's a YouTuber named Joe Cat who approached me some months ago, and said, "Hey, I want you to translate a video for me." And what that entails is take their script and look at it, translate it into the other language, write it out, and then hand it back to them, right? You gave me writing, I hand you back writing. An interpreter is someone who listens to conversation and then speaks that conversation back in another language. And I'm both of those things, right? So I'm both a document translator and also an interpreter. And I love it. I love it. And I'm also a teacher. I have clients that I teach Japanese to. I have clients that I teach English to. But I love getting to do both translation, which is something that I can do on my own. That's a little bit more, easy, that I can just say, okay, today I'm going to do 10 pages, and I just boom, 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 translate 10 pages, put that out, and that's kind of done. And then I can move on to the next thing tomorrow. So it's less stress. Higher stress is when I do interpreting, and I love that too, but it is very stressful. As a matter of fact, earlier this week, I had a meeting where I had 4 or 5 American guys and 4 or 5 Japanese guys, and they weren't seeing eye to eye on an issue, and it turned into a full argument.
Oh,
and
boy.
I, the interpreter, had to be in the middle of that argument, going, okay, well, they say this, and they're calling you a jerk. And then the other person saying, well, they called me a jerk, call them a stupid head, and back and forth.
Oh, no.
But I do love it.
Oh, man. Sensei, I think you're one of the most inspiring women I've ever met. And I think you're one of the strongest.
Thank you.
Let me actually here. There's a comment here. Gone with Law says, "XS, I'm so proud of you and happy that you survived those challenges and did what you had to do. I'm still holding back tears as I type this. You've done so much, and I know you'll continue doing your best. This has been so brave of you to share this all, and I'm so glad I was able to come and listen. Your story has been so helpful in understanding real-life trans issues and will help me be a better ally. Thank you."
I'm glad that I'm here to be able to have this conversation, because I think that along the path, there have been multiple moments when I think we could look at it and say, it's a miracle that I made it through. And I feel, I don't love using the word blessed, because I think that word has connotations that I'm not really, really in touch with. But I don't have a better word than to feel that I am blessed to be able to talk about this. And I'm not great at self-promotion, either in the literal sense or in the figurative sense of talking well about myself. But I know I'm a survivor, and I know that I'm never going to give up.
Jay Shiro says, "And thank you for being a voice for those of us that felt like our voices were taken away."
Yeah.
I think for me, I've always been, as a cis hetero male,
Yeah.
um, I'm always trying to do my best to be an ally because obviously it's not my lived experience, but I want to fight for you, and I want to fight for everyone just like you, because you deserve to live the life you're meant to.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. That should be the goal. That should be that you deserve that. And to know that you're here with us today, um every day you're above ground, Sensei. And I'll say this to everyone here. It's a miracle that you're here. I'm happy to have met you.
Thank you. And I feel the same way. I I say this to you from time to time, but I mean it from the bottom of my heart. In my opinion, you are a superhero, and I think that every nurse out there, I don't feel that I got the best care from my doctors, but I always felt every single time that it was my nurses who were keeping me alive. I can remember waking up from one of my surgeries and I was in more pain than I've ever felt in my entire life. And the nurse that I had sat with me and asked me how my pain was, and I talked with him. And as he was giving me more and more and more pain medications and saying, I'm gonna take care of you, I'm gonna make you feel better, we're going to get you through this pain because I don't want you to hurt anymore. But in between saying that, he had a lot of tattoos, and I had commented on them. And he spent better than an hour with me, giving me more pain medication and telling me the story of every one of his tattoos.
Aww.
Doctors are great because doctors can handle problems, but it's the close connection moments that I have with my nurses. It's those moments of a nurse taking the time to say, and this tattoo is one that I got when I was in Taiwan. And it's those moments that I'm never going to forget. A doctor is a doctor, and they'll take good care of you, and then they move on because they have other patients. But it's the nurses who take time out of their day to make you feel better.
I'm just some guy, Sensei.
And I'm just a puppy.
You're my puppy.
Yay. Thank you. Sorry, I'm all teary-eyed now.
Hey, same here. Thank you for sharing your experience with your nurse. Man, here I am tearing up too. Yeah. By the way, it's not cringe to have emotions, chat. Embrace it.
Yes. Yes. Be emotional.
And and I think that's important for healthcare providers to be able to express, that we're not just here to treat you, we're here to help. We want to be here to help you. And a lot of us, some of us go into it for our own reasons, so for some people it's a job, and I respect that. But for some people it's it's calling. And personally for me, the reasons I do the things I do is because I want to make sure people get the care they deserve and what matters, because you matter. Everyone here matters. So that being said, I did discuss with Puppy-Sensei about a charity link. If anybody is so inclined, I will I put in policy because, obviously I'm a working man. I earn enough money. I'm okay. You don't need to donate to me. You don't need to subscribe to me. Even if I ever do make affiliate or partner or whatever, I don't care about that. I care about making sure you guys learn something today, and sharing the lived experience so that way you learn. But if you can, if you have the funds, and the time, on the pinned link there is a charity called Point of Pride. They help fund gender affirming care for trans individuals all throughout the United States, so that way they get the care they need, so that way they get the access they need, because not everybody is lucky to have insurance, or through work, or not everybody can have the financial assistance wherever, from family or friends. Some people are literally going through this alone. So if you can, if you have it, if you can, if you're financially able, donate where you can. Even if it's just, a couple bucks here and there. It's, every little cent counts to help someone in need, to help someone realize who they really are.
I really want to thank you for doing that. It really matters, and I'm really, really thankful that you made that available for people, because there's not enough to go around. We only make up 1% of the population of the country. 1% of the population is trans, and we really need the help. And I will say also, to kind of go along with that charity that you've so graciously made available to people, I'll also say, if you can, donate blood, because I wouldn't be here without people who donated blood.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
So donating blood, when it comes to tragedies or big events that's happening, like even right now with the LA fires, there are people lining out the door wanting to donate blood, which is great. And honestly, I'm so happy to see people willing to reach out and help out the community. But the thing is, it's important we donate blood when there's not a need, because that's where the need is the most, because that's when we need the supply. That's when the blood gets processed. That's when the blood gets is sterilized, cleaned, make sure everything's set to go for when the need actually arises. So if you can find it in your time, and if you're healthy enough to donate blood at your nearest donation center when you can, obviously if you're healthy enough, do so, because without a blood donation, Sensei wouldn't be here with us today. And
It's true.
so many of our loved ones wouldn't be here today without it. It's a gift. It's a gift that you can keep on giving. Well, Sensei, is there anything else you wanted to share while you're on stream with us today?
Yeah, I think there's really just one last thing that I want to say, and that's, I know that there's a lot of debate right now about what we call the trans issue, and I find it hard to believe sometimes that we're in 2025 and we're still having these conversations, because I don't know, I just kind of have it in my mind that, like, it's 2025, and I thought maybe we would be over this right now, but we can quibble about the bathroom issue, and we can quibble about the sports issue and whether trans people should be in sports or not, and these are conversations that we can have, and maybe there are maybe people have different ideas on each side, and maybe that's something that we can talk about. But I will say that in my humble opinion, we can't talk about whether or not I'm a person, because I am a person. Whether I'm trans or not, I'm a person, and I deserve basic human decency and respect. And I know a lot of people are really frequently commenting on, my social media and talking about how, because I'm trans, I don't deserve certain things. And again, we can disagree politically, but we can't disagree when it comes to my rights. And that basic right is, just because we're trans, we're just as much people as anyone else.
Trans rights are human rights, folks.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we've fought for human rights since back in the 60s. We can still keep doing it now.
Yeah.
So please, stand up for each other, because otherwise who will be left to stand up for you?
And I guess maybe the last thing that I want to say is that if anybody ever has questions, or just needs to talk through something, and you need a trans person to talk to, I'm available.
Thank you so much, Sensei.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, I'm here to give you the platform, and I'm just a nurse. So I think when it comes down to it, we all deserve the care and love and understanding people need, and sometimes we won't always get that, but it's a conscious choice that we have to keep trying to make.
Yeah.
And I think everyone here needs to continue trying to make that choice. I need to make that choice, and whether in my professional or in my personal life. And I think Celeste says it best, you can choose to be kind, kindness above all else. And so, the world can be cruel. So I choose kindness instead.
Yeah. Yeah. Similarly, I'm very frequently known for saying that I always want to lead with love, that I want love to be the first thing that I feel, even with my perceived enemies. I love you. I do.
Well, I know it's been a heavy topic, and I know it's not what normally is shown on Twitch, but I think it's necessary, because we need these conversations. We need to be able to have this dialogue amongst our community, amongst ourselves, because if we don't stop and have it, when will we?
Yeah.
So, Sensei, thank you so much for being my first guest here. And thank you for sharing so much, and thank you so much for being my friend.
Always. I'm so thankful that I met you, and from the bottom of my heart, you are going to do great things with this show. I cannot wait to see where you go and what you talk about. And I can't wait to hear other people talk about their experiences too. I think it's such an important and vital thing that you're doing, to shine a spotlight on health and healthcare, especially within our community, because we're not known for taking good care of ourselves mentally or
Yeah.
physically.
Yeah, and so, but I want to be an impetus to help change that at least a little bit. So,
Yeah.
if I can make a little bit of a dent, then this is my contribution.
You've made a difference in my life without question, both on this show and outside of it.
Thanks, Sensei.
Always.
Well, everyone in chat, thank you for tuning in for Virtual Vital Signs. My name is Rico Siempre. RN, this is Puppy-Sensei.
Yeah.
We want to thank you for joining us today for this very, very special podcast. I hope to have more in the future with more guests, more VTubers, more content creators. Even if they're not creators, just people who want to share their story, who want to share the conditions, who want to share their lived experiences, because we need to share our lives with each other, because that's how we build bonds and build community. That's how we build empathy. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, everybody. Thank you so much.
And thank you from me as well.